Code Realize Guardians of Rebirth, one of the most well-known otome games, at least in North America, that was translated from Japan. It has a port on the PS Vita, on the Switch. It even has an adaptation for the PS4 with its fandisk related. We're gonna go a little bit into a review of what the game actually is and if it's worth it. To begin with, I'm going to have a couple of questions that I'm going to answer at first, just to give like little criterias on specifics that I would personally look at in a review myself. So for example, did I fall for a character? Indeed I did. I did fall for a character. It's Impy. We'll talk about him. Don't even worry about it. Is there merch for the game? There's plenty of merch. There's keychains, there's acrylic stands, there's like bags, shirts, whatever you want. There's plenty of merch if you really like the game itself and you want to decorate your life with it. There's plenty of merch for that. The platforms, like I said, it has come out on the PS Vita, on the Switch, and it has a repackaged version for the PlayStation 4 that englobes the two fan discs that I will do separate reviews for. I personally have played this one for the PS Vita. There's not a lot of differences for the Switch that I am aware of, so just keep that in mind while I do this review. There will be some triggers. I will do that for every single review from now on as well. There will be trigger warnings. In this game, if you are uncomfortable with elements of death, blood and gore, parental rejection, wounds, afterlife questioning and afterlife discussions, and risque sensual context, maybe you want to stay away from this game. To be completely honest, it is not intense to the point that I would not play the game. I've played it completely and it did not make me uncomfortable, except a little bit for the parental rejection, like the familial rejection. But besides that, it's not enough in my personal opinion to be completely disgusting and gross. I will put pictures or like elements in the video if I can to just kind of show you that it doesn't get too bad, but I am putting this out there. Now, how this works is I will have 5 elements of evaluation that I will put out of 10. These 5 elements will then accumulate to a total to see if this game is worth or not. If it is over 5 out of 10, it's probably worth it. So we will be talking about the main storyline, the character storyline, the graphics, the mechanics, and of course the translation, because that is something that is very important for me. If a game is not well translated at one point, I disconnect. So, we will be talking about these 5 elements, beginning with the main storyline. Code Realize Guardian of Rebirth is the first in a series of otome games, which are romance-based visual novels developed by Automate and Idea Factory, published by Axis Games. It has steampunk vibe in a reinvented 19th century London. It has familiar names of literary and historical characters, but very different from what you may imagine. You play as Cardia, a young woman who has poisoned skin and was isolated from civilization. You need to help her figure out her past and why a mysterious organization is trying to capture her. As well, you need to help her find love, discover touch. Anyway, it's great. So, main storyline. I will go over the things that I really like about this game, and the things that I don't like about this game are things that they're fun, they're funny, they're kind of funny. So to begin with, things I really love about this game. The female character, the protagonist, is not useless. Oh my goodness. She learns ways to be useful depending on the route that you take. She learns different things, and she's actually helpful. She's not always a damsel in distress, even though she is from time to time, but with the context of the story, it makes sense. There's a precious character called Cece. I will put a picture or a video right there, but Cece is the love of my life. The protagonist is very interesting. I love the fact that her storyline is a bit different from what you would imagine of protagonists of an otome game. She's shunned as a monster. The fact that she has poison blood, making her having a lethal touch, is really cool. The romance characters try to help get rid of the poison, and that's the main storyline, so it's not completely fixated on her and romance, even though, like, the goal to remove the poison is for her to experience love and have the warmth of another human being. But besides that, like, it's super interesting. The backstory, the main storyline, is extremely interesting and different from regular romance stories, like, just regular school life type of thing. There is an unexpected twists and turns in this game, unexpected betrayals, unexpected reveals. It is more unpredictable than I thought it would be. Some parts are still a little bit predictable, maybe because I'm so used to romance elements, but most of it is actually quite nice to be surprised with. There's endless possibilities to the story. Like I said, there's multiple routes. If I'm not mistaken, there is a total of 5 Bachelor in the first game. And the possibilities are endless. There's good endings, bad endings, very bad endings, normal endings. I like that there's so many different possibilities to how you can end the story. Also, of course, the female character you follow her as she goes through learning emotions and the world, because she's been kept in this house for so long. She doesn't really know people. It is amazing. It is so touching to see her feel joy, excitement for the very first time. Also, the intensity of the story, really good as well. It's also 50 to 60 hours long. Me personally, it took me more like 100 hours to complete because I like to dwell on the CG and fangirl like a little bitch. But it is quite a long game compared to certain otome games, but I personally really like that because it keeps me busy longer, and I get to spend more time with my favorite. Something that is very funny, there are certain words in the game that are a little more intricate, especially for me personally, because English is my second language. There are some words that I had so much trouble pronouncing in my head, and it was really, really funny. Horologium. Horologium? Horologium. Horologium. Homunculus. Among Us. Homuncul. I give up. Now, there are 2 elements that I don't like too much about this game. The first one is the amnesia trope, where the main protagonist forgot her memories. In the case of Cardia, 2 years prior to her living in this house, she has no memories of what her life was, who she is, how she got there, which is kind of typical, and it's an overused trope. Thankfully, like, it's not super axed on it, but I don't really like the forget memories trope. That's not my type of thing. Also, the common route before romance routes are it's extremely long. It's crazy long. The common route is crazy long. It's so long. Half of the game is the common route, which I understand since the main focus is her story and what's happening with her and why she forgot her memories, why she has poison touch and stuff like that. I understand, but the common route is so long. So all in all, the story, I give it a 9 out of 10. It's a pretty good story. It's honestly a really good story, and the romance elements are perfect for me, in my opinion. It's very sweet. There's a little bit of angst. Like, it's the perfect in between. I really like it. It's a 9 out of 10. For the graphics, if you haven't realized by everything I've put on the screen so far, the graphics are amazing. They're a mix of steampunk and fantasy in 19th century. It's amazing. I love it. So that's a 10 out of 10. For the translation, it's a 9 out of 10 for this one. So most of the time, the translations are accurate, are pretty well done, but there are a little bit of typos from like here and there. So it's not too bad, but there are sometimes typos. As for the mechanics, I give it an 8 out of 10. The menu to see the controls when you forget them are easy to reach, but you have to know how to reach them. Like, you have to know the button to reach the menu. If you don't know that button, it's kind of hard to navigate. I like that the game is choice-based, because when I will talk about the fan disc, that's a big thing I'm not too happy about. But this game, you have plenty of choices to make. It's very choice-based, and it's very nice. I like that at some point there is a here I go with that word again, horologium corruption type of thing that I think is very cool, and I wish they explored that even more, because I think it was amazing. And I really like that you sometimes have pictures of the horologium on her chest and like the colors that it has. I think it's really cool. They could have pushed it way further. And finally, the romance tracking it's super complicated. It's tough. There's no like exact percentages. It doesn't do like a +5 or like +10, or it's hard to keep track of. So that's why mechanics are an 8 out of 10. As it comes to character stories, now we're delving into romantic stories. I have my thoughts. I have my pieces to say. And I get very excited about romance, so you already know this is about to be good. So I'm going to start with who most players recommend to start with, which is Impey Barbicane. Impey is my personal favorite. I love him. He's an absolute flirt in the beginning. As soon as he sees you, he's like, "Oh, my lady, I love you, marry me." And it's amazing. It's so funny. He's a bit of a comic relief, but he has a soft interior, which I'm a sucker for. Comic relief, class clown, soft interior, take me. So you don't really delve much into his backstory. You have a very short childhood story for Impey, but you don't know much about him. You know enough to know where his main romance story is going, and like his dreams and his beliefs and his drive, and it's really cute. Honestly, it's a little short, but it's really cute. The ending was amazing. No spoilers, but it was amazing. And everything about him wishing to make a trip to the moon, oh, it hits me in the heart. It's so cute. He's so passionate. I love him. Now, for Abraham Van Helsing, it's like an enemy to lover trope. You only see him halfway through the game. It's not really halfway. It's halfway through the common route that you finally meet Abraham Van Helsing. And he's literally an enemy to lover. He wants to steal the secret weapon that he doesn't even know that it's the girl. He wants to capture her. He's being paid for a job. And finally you convince him to get on his side. And as you get to know him, he is squishy. He is squishy! He's so sweet! It's not even funny. It is. He's so squishy. And it's so funny because he comes from a revenge place, and then as you get to like understand him, learn about him, flirt a little bit, get into a romantic route, he is so squishy, and I love him so much for that. He's a weapon specialist, he's a vampire hunter, his backstory is extremely emotional and angsty, so beware. But it's so good. As for Victor Frankenstein, very squishy. From the beginning to the end, very squishy. He is loved by all. He's an alchemist who becomes a doctor. His past is a bit awkward, like how the storytelling is about his past with his relationship with the queen. It's a little awkward. It felt like another story altogether until the end of his retelling when he explains the relation between him working for the queen and the main storyline. Like, it's a bit awkward. But I love Victor Frankenstein. I think he's absolutely adorable. I love his character design. Ooh, out of all of them, he probably has the best character design, in my opinion. Now, Saint-Germain. Saint-Germain, he's, like, very mysterious. He's the, like, rich guy, but very gentlemanly, very, like, you're not sure what he's thinking. He has a creepy, constant smile that kind of threw me off in the beginning. Like, I did not want to romance him in the beginning. I was like, that's not my type of character. He's kind of creepy. I'm fine. Then you get into his backstory, and you get into the romance elements. The backstory is like a story on its own. You can make an entire game out of it. You know how I said about Victor Frankenstein that, like, his backstory could be a side story? Saint-Germain's backstory could be an entire game. It's intense. There's a lot of information all at once. It gets overwhelming at times. And it's very dark as well. A lot of mentions of, like, afterlife, how the world goes, who controls the world, and things. It's very intense. As for the romantic part, he is very self-conscious. He doubts everything. He's a little bit obsessive, even. I'm not sure I like that. But how it was written, amazing. Great. The written story of it was great. It's just the backstory that has so much information that it was too much for me. Now we get to Arsène Lupin. So Arsène Lupin is the main love interest. So every Otome game, or most Otome game at the very least, they have a character that you're like, canonically, the female character ends with this one. This is the case for Arsène Lupin. He's the canonically main interest. So he's a gentleman thief. He's very sweet. He's playful and flirty at the same time, but not too much to be impé. He hints a lot at the flirting, and every time you go into a romantic route with another character, you can see his disappointment, his sadness, and it's kind of bittersweet. He's the one that promises Cardia that he will get rid of her poison so that she can feel the warmth of another and experience love. He's the one that's willing to teach her about all of these things. It is, honestly, the main pairing. I like his storyline because a lot of the truths about the story are revealed in his route because he is the main route. So most of the information that is pertinent to the main story is discovered. Everything is put very obviously in his story. It's a mix of bittersweet and fluff romance. There's not a lot about his backstory, which I was very surprised about. It's mostly about Cardia's main story. I was surprised that we did not explore his backstory more, but at the same time, I'm not that surprised because he's the main love interest, which means he has to complete Cardia's story. Which is why I like the fan discs, because you learn a little bit more about him. But in general, for the character stories and the romance options, I give it an 8 out of 10. There's a lot of information, sometimes it's overwhelming, sometimes some of them could be complete side stories, or a complete game on its own. Wink wink, Saint-Germain. But in general, all the characters are very lovable, they're very romanceable, like, I am interested in pursuing them in the game. So, that is how I see it at the moment. So all in all, in my personal opinion, the graphics are a 10 out of 10, the main story, 9 out of 10, the side stories, 8 out of 10, the mechanics, 8 out of 10, and the translation, 9 out of 10, for a grand total of 8.8 out of 10. It was one of my favorite Otome games when it first came out. I still have plenty of merchandise from Impy, and I am planning on getting more, don't even worry about that. Impy is a masterpiece in my personal opinion. All these characters are very loving, attentionate, romanceable. The story is interesting, intricate, and different. There are some things that could be worked, or there's something that could be completely removed for the game, but isn't that the case with every game? Anyway, so if you've liked the reviews, this is going to be a more common things on this channel. I will mostly be reviewing Otome games in the beginning, and then we'll slowly make my way into other games. I have to complete the games before making any reviews, so if you have any games to recommend, let me know in the comments below, and subscribe!